We all know Russian President Vladimir Putin loves to portray himself as a strong man through elaborate photo ops perpetuating a macho man image, the infamous shirtless summer vacation exploits by the rather diminutive dictator, or his annual hockey exhibition games where, despite learning to play late in life, he always notches an impressive number of goals. Wonder why. Although in 2019, that image slipped, literally, as he took a victory lap during a match in Sochi. Now, that's all essentially a proxy for his aggression toward Ukraine. The strongman who, in his mind, epitomizes Russian strength falling on his face. He's also been stripped of his macho bona fides. His honorary black belt from Taekwondo's governing body was stripped because of the invasion. In another rambling diatribe today, Putin again leveled outrageous lies about the Ukrainian people and insisted that his war in Ukraine is going according to plan, even as the so-called Great Russian Army in Ukraine is plagued by poor morale, with some soldiers surrendering or even sabotaging Russia's efforts. While the Kremlin has tried to hide the reality of the invasion from the Russian people, that is becoming increasingly difficult. Russia's defense ministry confirmed casualties for the first time. There's also the weight of crushing Western financial sanctions. Moscow's stock exchange closed again for the fourth straight day. Meanwhile, Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov said today that Russia was ready to conduct talks with Ukraine, but added that Russia would continue the war, which the Kremlin refuses to even call a war, to the bitter end. With me now, NBC News senior international correspondent Keir Simmons, live in Moscow, and Anne Applebaum, staff writer for The Atlantic and author of Twilight of Democracy. And Keir, I wonder if you are getting a sense of how much of the reality of what's happening in Ukraine, including the just extravagant violence, but also the failures on the part of the Russian military, are bleeding into, the ears and eyes of Russians inside of that country.
Well, I think it must be known by one Russian, and that's Vladimir Putin. And that image you showed of him giving his speech today, he was boiling, quietly boiling. It's clear that he is furious just by his visage, by the way that he appears, and also determined. Honestly, right now, Joy, I think we're at a point where hope is hard to find. Economic hope, military hope for the Russians, but also for the Ukrainians, frankly, because despite the fact that they have had these setbacks. I heard Cal talking earlier on the show. We heard from the French president who spoke for 90 minutes to President Putin that he believes that the Russians want to take the whole of Ukraine. And I think that President Putin pretty clearly is determined to do that. That's all the messaging that we are getting. Joy, just think about this, and I think it's pretty chilling, really, in terms of what we're looking at. You mentioned a little earlier the Iraq War. I think the casualty numbers for US forces in the Iraq War was around 4,500. Obviously, many more civilians were killed. In Russia's Afghanistan War, over 9 years, 15,000. Now, the Russians today claiming that they have had 500 people killed. The Ukrainians are claiming 7,000. Russians have been killed. We don't know the exact number, but we do know that the Russian president today, effectively on television, admitted that Russians are dying and even offered the equivalent of $50,000 for each family where a Russian has died. So he's changing the narrative to try to get his country to accept the kinds of casualties. And the problem is we can talk about, that might change Russian opinion, but what it might also mean is an astonishing clampdown on the people of Russia, not just in terms of what they're allowed to know, but also whether they're allowed to protest on all those issues. And then you have this iron curtain going down between Russia and the West. I wish I could stand here and be more positive, but I think things look pretty dark tonight.
Yeah, indeed, and they're getting darker. We're getting reports of from NBC News of heavy weapons fire at the largest nuclear plant in a city called Enerhodar. That's terrifying. That is almost a worst-case scenario. That they're actually shelling near the largest nuclear plant in Ukraine. That sounds like indiscriminate. That does not sound like something that's going according to plan, and incredibly, incredibly dangerous. And then the other little point that I'll make as well is Russian MPs calling for anti-war protesters, and this is for you as well, Keir, to be conscripted and sent to the front line, sent to these breakaway regions and made to fight. This sounds like inside of even the heads of people that are MPs in Russia, they don't even want to raise the morale of their own people. They just want to use them as cannon fodder, and they're willing to risk a Chernobyl-style nuclear nightmare. They don't seem to care much about the Russian people.
Yeah, I mean, what we saw today with President Putin's speech again is that his Security Council were there, but they weren't there because they were on video, beamed in. So once again, he's at a distance from who are supposed to be his closest advisors. And we've talked already, Joy, this week about the work we're doing trying to understand who is influencing President Putin. And it does look as if the people who are influencing him, some of the intelligence services, his bodyguards, there is this unit of presidential protection kind of team, a large organization, very influential here in Russia. And we don't know this, but you can imagine a scenario where during the last 2 years of COVID, President Putin might not have had so much access, certainly not with the oligarchs, perhaps not with his advisors, but with that kind of tighter unit of intelligence officers and bodyguards and those kinds of people. So one imagines that they are still the people who he is talking to and is influencing him. And how have his views changed? You know something, I used to say about Russia that be careful what you wish for, because President Putin could be replaced by somebody more nationalistic, more hardline. It looks as if President Putin has been replaced by that person, but it's President Putin having shifted his position quite substantially.
And Ann Applebaum, to bring you in here, and also having, the former president loves to call President Putin a genius and shrewd. This seems so incredibly wrong-headed to think that you can force 44 million people to rejoin your, the empire in your mind, when they've made it very clear they have no interest in doing that. Calling a country led by a Jewish man a Nazi while you are shelling the memorial to the Holocaust inside of Ukraine, and saying you're going to conscript people who are protesting against the war. And what are you going to do? Put guns to their heads to make them kill Ukrainians who they clearly have said they do not want any part of it. None of it is rational to me. And I feel like I keep saying it over and over again. None of it seems rational to me. What do you make of where Putin is mentally and strategically at this stage?
So, unfortunately, it is rational within Putin's understanding of the world. In the talk that he gave today, and the rant actually that he did on television today, he made it clear once again that his objective is to eliminate and remove the Ukrainians. They haven't turned out to be the pliant people that he thought they were going to be. He thought that he would march in and they would be in Kiev in 48 hours and they would welcome the Russian troops with flowers and the war would be over. He's very distant from reality. He has very little sense of what modern Ukraine is really like. He has no contact with Ukrainians, and I think probably the people around him have very little contact either. But his theory of the world, his theory of Russian history and geography is that space in which modern Ukraine exists is really Russian. And so therefore, the logic of that is that we need to eliminate the people who are there, the so-called Nazis, the non-people, the evil people who have somehow twisted the minds of the inhabitants, and we need to eliminate them and replace them with something else. And this is really dangerous, really frightening, genocidal thinking. He is now thinking about eliminating, destroying. This targeting of civilians now is not an accident. It's about removing people from that space and substituting them with something else.
And to say very quickly, President Zelensky has warned the world and said that he won't be done, that this mania and his megalomania extends beyond Ukraine, and that if Ukraine goes, so will many, many other countries. He'll try to get it all back, get the whole USSR back. Do you think that it could be possible, when this man clearly has not deployed enough troops, maybe doesn't have enough troops, to really hold that country, that he would try for more?
So those are two different questions. I mean, one, yes, I do think it's possible he could try for more. What he's trying to do is bring the West to its knees, bring America to its knees. He talks a lot about America, although we're so far away, and make them feel the shame and humiliation that he felt at the time of the breakup of the Soviet Union. So he is trying to reverse history, to turn it backwards, to replace the modern world with something in the past. It's kind of grotesque distortion of nostalgia. But the second part of your question, which is, can he do it, is, I mean, one of the reasons why so few people in Russia believed that this would happen and why there's so much shock and consternation in Moscow is that he doesn't have the troops to hold Ukraine. He doesn't have an occupying force. And one of the fears that people have is that since he can't occupy it, he'll destroy it. And so understanding that and understanding that that's his logic and that he will then seek to spread those tactics as far as he can, I think is really important right now so that we understand the scale of what could happen and the distortions of his mind.